Welcome everyone. I am Paula Barbeito from Slow Food and I will lead you through this Terra Madre Forum. In this virtual meeting, we will talk about water, a common good. But before we start, I would like to remind you some important logical aspects for the development of this forum. This forum has the format of a webinar, and therefore the video and the microphone of the participants will be turned off. To interact, we encourage you to leave your comments and ask your questions through the chat. The forum will last 1 hour. Once all the speakers have finished their discourses, we will open the debate by following the questions that arrive to the chat. To use the interpretation function, please check on the world map and choose the language in which you would like to follow this forum. Remember that to listen in Italian, you must select Korean. Also, in this forum, we have the graphic facilitation by our colleagues from House Atomic. So from time to time, you will be able to see the graphic synthesis of the issues addressed in this forum. Just to remind you, we will be streaming YouTube, and you can find the link in the chat if you want to share it. So I think we are ready, so now we can start. Water, a common good. Water is a fundamental link between humans and nature. It represents the state of health of our relationship with the planet, and it is a crucial element for our livelihoods. The United Nations have recognized the human right to water 10 years ago, and yet current trends indicate water is becoming an even more scarce resource, and the access to water is increasingly being privatized. Nowadays, water is stripped of its biological identity, its spirituality, and the healing power to become just another simple commodity. Today, we are going to hear experiences from around the world that will tell us how to use water efficiently, how to protect aquatic biodiversity, or how to fight water. And we are going to do it through an aquatic journey, so following the course of the waters. We will start from the mountains of Japan, where we will listen to Tomonori Tasaki. We will reach the forest of India by the hand of Ranocchiari. We will follow the course of the rivers in the Balkans with Marco Ranocchiari. And our journey will end on the islands of Kerkena in Tunisia with the fisherman Hafed Ben Musa. Without any further ado, I would like to introduce you to Tomonori Tasaki, who will tell us about a very particular irrigation system in the Takashi-o Shibayama area, which is an area of slope lands and high altitude. And despite those factors, this mountain represents an amazing agricultural system that has been designated as one of the globally important agricultural heritage system sites by the Food and Agriculture Organization. Welcome, Tomonori. Could you please tell us why this irrigation system is so particular?
Okay, thank you, Paula. And good evening, everyone. I'm Tomonori Tasaki from Japan, and actually it's 6 p.m. in Japan, so good evening from Japan. So let me introduce our town first, and let me show you how we manage our agriculture system with water. So our town is called Takachiho-go Shibayama, and our town is like a Takachiho town, and we have 11,000 people living in, and actually our town is famous for sightseeing, and more than 1 million people visit our town for sightseeing. And our town is designated as GIAS. It's about globally important agriculture heritage system. We call it a GIAS, and they designate agriculture system as an important system. And this is the program by FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, and they are aiming to make a dynamic conservation of the traditional agriculture system. And agriculture system means like a agriculture performance and also biodiversity and also traditional system and knowledge and landscape, etc. And there are about more than 60 sites are designated as GIAS. And our site is one of the GIAS. And let me explain about our agriculture system. And among our town, about 92% occupies forest. So we live in the mountainous area and very slope area. and we do not have a flat land. So we have a small land for agriculture practice. So we have to maximize those small land so that we can make a profit depending on the season. For example, let's say I am the farmer. In the spring, I plant rice. Then in the summer, I harvest such as cucumbers, eggplant, and etc. And in autumn, I harvest rice. So it's now it's a season for harvesting rice, and the rice paddies turned gold. It's a very beautiful season in Japan. And in the winter, I harvest shiitake mushroom. And also in the winter, we perform a kagura, which is a traditional dance performance, and to pray for the harvest for the next year. And in our agricultural system, water is the fundamental factor, which means irrigation is also the fundamental factor. Because as we live in the mountainous area, the river is very far. It's not easy to access the water. It's not easy to access the river. So we need to build an irrigation system long time ago. Our ancestors built a lot of irrigation more than like 300 or 400 years ago by hand. And now when we sum up all of the irrigation, the length is now reached about more than 500 kilometers. We have like 30 or 40 irrigation canal among our site. And the irrigation starts deep in the mountain. It goes down the mountains, and some irrigation actually goes through the city center, and we get back to the river. And thanks to this irrigation, we can grow the rice. So without this irrigation, without this water, we cannot manage our agricultural system. And also, this irrigation system cannot be built by a single person. We have to work together, and we have to work together to maintain the irrigation. When we have a big typhoon, we have to see all of the irrigation if there's no trouble. So we have to all work together. So we share the water for a long time, for many years. So we share the spirits of sharing water. And this is not only about the water, it's also about sharing the work and sharing the food. So we, I think, more likely to get together and talk and work together how we can make our agriculture system more sustainable. And actually, among them, the water is the biggest factor in our system. So yes, and also I am one of the people who live in this site, so I help the community to work together. And yeah, and I think I am one of the person who share the spirit, who share the water with everyone. Yes, I think that's all for our system. Thank you very much for listening. Yeah, and lastly, Paula said how the key factor to make water, to use the water efficiently, my answer is the community work. We have to share the water. We have to share the spirit of sharing. I think that is my answer to her question. Thank you, Paula.
Thank you very much, Tomonori. Your contribution has highlighted a very, very important aspect, the spirit of sharing and working together, and how this spirit has been passed down from one generation to the other. This kind of approach is also very common in indigenous communities. And to learn more about that, I would like to introduce you to our next speaker, Ranocchiari. Aruna is part of the Indigenous Terra Madre network in Jharkhand, India. This region is slowly moving into desertification. However, water conservation efforts using indigenous knowledge are changing the course of things. Welcome, Aruna. Could you please share with us more details about the ongoing water conservation movement in your region?
Yeah, thank you, Paula. Yeah, Jihad from India, Jharkhand. So today I'm going to speak about indigenous knowledge leadership and knowledge used in water conservation in Bero, Jharkhand of India. So before that, I would like to introduce about a brief introduction about myself. I'm Aruna Tirki, an indigenous woman from Jharkhand, a slow food entrepreneur, founding member of Jharkhand chapter of Slow Food Community. I work for indigenous food revival as a means to strengthen culture and identity. I link indigenous food revival with local employment, creation and better income for farmers practicing traditional crops and collectors of forest and uncultivated products. I am passionate about saving everything that support and sustains slow food system, water being one of them. So I would speak about the Jharkhand of my province. The more than 25% of the populations are indigenous communities. This has halved since independence with more settled populations. 30% of area is under forest. The state is rich in resources, yet its indigenous peoples are disposed. My state Jharkhand is said to be slowly moving towards desertification. Around 68% of the land is undergoing desertification, and water erosion is the primary reason for it. Amidst this grim scenario, I bring to you a story of hope, hope for human survival, hope for planet Earth, hope for every bit of living and non-living entity, hope for a better future, for the dispossessed hope for the slow food. I bring to you a story about an area in Jharkhand that grows 3 crops a year. It's one of the largest vegetable growing regions of the state, producing around 20,000 quintal of vegetable that are exported annually. Amidst looming threat of desertification, is this a sheer miracle? No, it's not. It's a story of human great resilience, perseverance, and determination and use of traditional indigenous knowledge. It tells us that we as human can build more than we can destroy. Indigenous knowledge must be respected and recognized for a sustainable future. It's a story of one Baba Simon Urao, the living legend, a recipient of Padma Bhushan, the fourth highest civilian honor of India. This man single-handed led the water conservation movement in the region. Water erosion was the evil he realized his, his sooner when he was still in his childhood. He could watch the water eroding the land, rampant forest destruction due to outside demand added to the problem of water induced soil erosion. Catching the water as it flows was Simon Urao mantra. He used his local knowledge to build small dams to store the water and help in ground recharge, used local tools, technology, and materials. He started building the first dam in 1961 over an area of 12 hectares in 1961, which was completed in 1970. It was easier said than done. Initially, it was hard to convince people who were used to cut down the forest and still would yet lived in utter poverty. However, Baba's perseverance paid off richly. The local community started gathering behind this effort. With this, he also prompted his people to start conserving forests and was even jailed by administration who acted in convinced with the timber mafia. No to big dams. Baba Simon says government should build small dams. Big dams change the path and motion of rivers and do more harm than good. Is what Baba is confused about. These results speaks for themselves. So over the period, what has the impact? Communities of 50 villages replicated his water conservation models that caters to more than 500 hectares of farmland today. There is a lush green protected forest spread over 50, more than 250 hectares of area. We conserve it and use it sustainably. In the words of Simon Baba, on the one hand, we started guarding the forest round the clock, while on the other, we set up a committee to look after the forest. Improvement in farms saw return of traditional rice varieties and millet that can even grow in suboptimal water availability situations. Improved forest meant increased supply of NTFE and uncultivated foods. So, what was the challenges and opportunities in this regards? Baba's model is well appreciated, but still failed to penetrate policy making. State, yeah. So, state still thrusts to big dam approaches. So, to conserve water, adding to the water woes are the deep borewell that are extensively prompted. Baba, Simon, Safer, and Barrow has a lot to offer. For policymakers, indigenous knowledge needs to better recognize encouragement and promotion. Conserving water would be a big boon for the earth and humanity. An example like these have simpler, replicable, and scalable solution to offer. So the Jharkhand slow food community recognize the need to talk about these unheard voices, make them stronger and part of larger mainstream discourse for a sustainable future. There is a need to continue the struggle for making policies recognize indigenous knowledge, traditions, and practices that promote sustainable living and a climate secure future. Thank you, Johar.
Thank you very much, Aruna. Simon Baba's message is clear: no to big dams. Big dams change the path and motion of rivers, affecting the whole biodiversity and normally doing more harm than good. But still, hydroelectric power is seen as one of the cleanest energy sources. Our next speaker, Marco Ranocchiari, is an Italian journalist who has been following the hydroelectric tsunami movement in the Balkans. This is the only area in the European continent where most of the rivers still retain their natural state. And they are in the crosshairs of the hydroelectric speculation. Buongiorno, Marco. How did resistance to hydropower arise in the Balkans?
Hi, buongiorno, and hi to everyone. So thank you for your interventions before. I would just like to say that yes, hydroelectric power is often seen as a good source of energy or a clean source of energy, and this is especially true when it comes to small hydroelectric plants, because often people tend to think that small is beautiful, so that sometimes they don't really realize how big an impact it can have if the stream where they are put on, it's a small stream, because often it's going to catch all the water from this small stream. As you said, the Balkan Peninsula is the only part in Europe where there are a lot of rivers that are still free flowing, so they are they don't have so many dams or check dams or banks like the rest of the continent has. So as a journalist, I was following what's going on in the Balkans, and I was really surprised to see that so many people were ready to fight and to take it so seriously. So this would never happen in Western Europe, I think, because people have still a strong connection with rivers that in some other areas of the continent it has been lost. So what's happening now is that there are almost 3,000 new hydropower plants that are planned or already in construction in all the region. And that's the bad news. But there is also good news, because everywhere was happening, there was a lot of resistance and a lot of small or big protests that tried to stop this, what now is known as a tsunami, a dam tsunami, as you just call it. And I would like to focus more on Bosnia and Herzegovina because it's the country where I've been following more what was happening, and it's really in the center of this issue. Even the name of the country, Bosnia or Bosnia, is the name of a river. So you can really see that from the very name, rivers have a huge importance in that. Or maybe you can think of Mostar with the old bridge that is one of the postcards of the country itself. So many people see rivers as a part of their identity more than a thing in which they take where they use the water for agriculture or for fishing, but it's also part of their identity. And this really helped a lot for all these many protests because they were really, really surprising in some aspects. I will tell an example, the story that happened in Kruščica, which is a small village in the center of the country. So there were some small hydropower plants that should be done and they would take all the water from this local stream that is called Kruščica as well. There were some clashes with the police, and it was like a shock for the people that didn't expect that. And after a while, the women of the village, they decided to take over the protest because they thought that they would not be able to beat them as a women. So they took and occupied the bridge that was the access to the construction site. What happened next is that they stayed there they didn't expect that, but they stayed there for 500 days, so more than 1.5 years. Day and night in the winter, in the summer, they could never leave the bridge because otherwise the bulldozers would come. And because of their, they become very famous, let's say that, because it became like an example to follow, and it helped to bring this issue to reach the media and to have a lot of consensus in all the similar struggles. So after 1.5 years, these women succeeded because at the same time there was a legal battle that was going on. So there was a trial and the judges decided that these women were right. So the river for now it's safe. But as I said, this is just one of the examples because there are really tons of stories like that in the country and in the Balkans in general. A few months ago, in June, so 3 months ago, it was the biggest victory for these movements because the parliament of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is more or less 50% of the country, they stopped the construction of new hydropower plants. There was a moratorium, which, to be honest, has expired for the moment, but they are probably going to turn it into a permanent law. So it could be a permanent ban. We still don't know how it's going to happen, but anyway, it's a great success for these movements. Also in the other half of the country, which is the Republic of Srpska, they are doing a lot of things and probably they expect to have some similar decisions. This is really, really unexpected because in the country is a really a frail country, let's say, because of the institutions are really complicated, the bureaucracy is huge, and it's quite a poor country as well. So it was very easy for private companies to invest in water because it's the easiest way to produce renewable energy. And the same politicians that now stopped, for the moment at least, the construction were the same ones that in the past they were really strongly in favor. And this happened because people are really aware about this issue, which I said is very surprising for a country like Europe, where usually people don't even see the rivers and don't feel so much connected with them. So just to finish that, I would like to say what in my opinion is peculiar about this kind of movements is that they were able to be at the same time very, very local, because these streams and these rivers are often very small and inhabited by really few people. But at the same time, they were able to realize that even in neighbor countries, the thing that was going on was similar, was the same. So around 10 years ago, there were some NGOs that drew a map. And from the map, it was really easy to see that it was something that was happening contemporarily everywhere in the Balkans. And they started to coordinate, and they gained a lot of visibility, which make them access to reach the media, or to take on big actions or creative actions and legal actions as well, that by single protest they would never be able to reach. So for now it's a good moment, even for other Balkan countries, because in Albania there was also a big victory a few weeks ago about the Vjosa River, which is another struggle that has lasted for years. So we don't really know how it happens, but anyways, it's a great example to show how people and local communities, they can, when they talk to each other and they organize themselves, they can do something that can be, I wouldn't say global, but transnational for sure. So thank you for listening. I think the time is over. If you have more questions, I will tell you later. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marco. Indeed, there are some questions coming for you, but we will come to these questions later. I want to encourage all the participants or our audience to please share your thoughts and ask questions in the chat to discuss later on. Well, it is clear that preserving biodiversity, the biodiversity of these ecosystems, is a benefit not only for nature but also for people, since these habitats have a deep symbolic and cultural meaning. And I really believe that it's possible to stimulate a more sustainable economic development around the conservation and the natural and cultural treasures. This is something that I learned when I visited Hafed Ben Musa in Tunisia. Hafed is the head of the Slow Food Presidium of Kerkena Island Traditional Fishing. These islands are a very fragile ecosystem that is being negatively affected by illegal fishing, by plastic pollution, and even land-based activities. But this presidium represents hope. All the community is working together to restore the island's ecosystem and keep the ancient knowledge of marine currents and fish behavior. So, bonjour, Hafed, welcome. Could you please tell us more about the sharfia, this fascinating fishing technique, and also all the activities your community is doing to keep the cultural and biological identity of Kerkena Island? Hafed? Okay. You are attendez Hafed parce que tu es en silence.
Oui.
Voilà.
Merci pour la présentation. J'interviens en tant que citoyen et en tant que porte-parole de la communauté de la Charfia. L'eau est un bien commun, l'air aussi, la terre aussi. Tout est lié, surtout lorsqu'il s'agit d'environnement et d'écosystème. Le moindre déséquilibre, c'est le désastre. C'est le désastre. Bien que le sujet est très vague, j'interviens de ma position d'habitant de l'île de Kerkena, et des changements de l'image de l'île. La moyenne de pluviométrie de l'île est très faible. La région est connue pour ses palmiers qui poussent spontanément, des champs de raisins et des figues. Nos ancêtres collectent les eaux de pluie. Ils ont beaucoup de techniques de collecte de pluie. l'État encourage la construction de puits et citernes. Partout il y a les puits, partout il y a les citernes. Actuellement, ils sont délaissés pour l'irrigation qui n'est pas très importante, l'irrigation à Kirkina. Mais pour le palmier, c'est l'identité de l'île. Le palmier, c'est l'identité de l'île. Actuellement, cette image change. Les gens commencent à s'occuper d'oliviers et ont délaissé plus ou moins délaissé les palmiers. De cette position, la charfia a été affectée. Puisque la charfia, cette pêche traditionnelle, repose sur le palmier, les palmes de la palmier. Depuis une vingtaine d'années, l'État a creusé des puits artésiens. Ces puits artésiens sont plus ou moins salés. Ça a encouragé les gens à cultiver des oliviers au détriment des palmiers. De plus en plus, on voit que les gens se tournent vers le plastique. Ce n'est pas le seul facteur, mais il y a beaucoup de facteurs, mais c'est le facteur déterminant. Ils se retournent vers le plastique. La charfia actuellement est presque à 60% ou 70%. Elle est de plastique. L'image même à l'île a changé. Pour les gens qui demeurent sur la voie de la tradition et où ils sont conscients, ils sont obligés d'apporter des palmiers d'autres régions, oasis de Gabès. La question ici, il faut consacrer une partie de ces eaux pour l'irrigation de palmiers. Pourquoi pas créer une genre d'oasis pour promouvoir la charfia, pour venir en aide pour cette charfia qui actuellement, elle souffre, bien qu'on est en train de sensibiliser et les gens vont finir par admettre, mais peut-être ça serait tard. Ça serait tard lorsqu'ils sont conscients, ça serait tard. On veut que ça soit le plus tôt possible. Ces gens arrivent à admettre le plus tôt possible. L'axe principal de l'existence de la charfia, eh bien, c'est le palmier. Cet équilibre entre l'écosystème terrestre et l'écosystème marin. Actuellement, cet équilibre n'est plus. Nous sommes en état de déséquilibre. Voilà ce que je veux.
Thank you very much, Hafed. Thank you all very much for your amazing stories. We have heard about water in the mountains, water in the forest, in the rivers, and in the sea. And I see there is a common element to all these realities that we have heard, and is the role of the collective responsibility in the future of this precious good, in the future of water. This is nothing new. It is nothing new, but we often forget about that. And I would really like to invite all the listeners to this forum to not forget about the power that collective action has to change the course of things. Now is the moment to give the floor to our public. We have received some questions that we would like to ask to our speakers. So I will start chronologically. We have received a question for Marco. Marco, you have mentioned that there is this big interest in building the dams in the Balkans, and actually I think the number was around 2,000 projects, and the question is why is this interest in building dams in the Balkans so a huge number?
Well, So there is a lot of interest in that because first of all, it's the only part in Europe where it's still possible to do that, because in the rest of the continent, all rivers are taken. And it's also the reason why they are mainly small hydropower plants, is because usually they are put on small rivers, because big rivers are already taken as well in the Balkans. And the Balkans is a region where that is really rich in streams. There is a lot of mountains, so they're also quite steep. So there is quite some energy that can be actually taken from there. But the real reason, I think it's subsidies, because they are still sold as something that is renewable. So these countries, they are trying to conform to the rest of maybe the European standards, or in general, they want to show that they are investing in renewable energy. So they are taking a lot of subsidies for that. Usually these kind of investors, they come from other countries, mainly from Western Europe. Sometimes they're local as well. And it's also quite easy, relatively easy. It depends on the country, of course, but it's there are not so many controls sometimes. So you need the environmental impact assessment, but and all other legal standards, but it's not always so easy to check if all the standards are met. So in general, it's easier than in other countries. I think that's that.
Okay, thank you very much. And we have also a question for Hafed. Hafed, how can we reproduce today an oasis system? Wait, arrête, Hafed, tu es encore en silence.
Ça va?
Yes.
Allô?
Okay, now can you speak, Hafed? No, excuse me, Hafed, you just put in silence again. Okay, voila. Oops, Hafed, no, I'm very sorry, but you have to change. Okay, now.
On ne va pas créer des oasis. C'est genre, j'ai dit genre d'oasis. Si on vient à l'aide de ces palmiers, même avec le travail, le coupage, un peu de, on labore et on affecte un peu d'eau pour ces palmiers, on aura des palmes résistantes, des palmes qui peuvent subvenir aux besoins. Pourquoi les pêcheurs actuellement ne sont pas pour les palmes de Karkina? Parce qu'elles sont petites. Elles sont petites. Puisqu'ils travaillent avec une profondeur bien déterminée, ces palmes ne viennent pas pour ces besoins. Elles ne sont pas adéquates à ces besoins. C'est pourquoi il faut donner un peu de travail, de page. Ce n'est pas un effort, c'est un effort collectif qui doit se faire. Ces choses-là existaient avant, avec nos ancêtres. Cet équilibre existait avec le travail, avec la solidarité. Actuellement, ça manque. Ces choses-là, cette solidarité, ce labour n'existe pas. Actuellement, on est en train de sensibiliser les gens à retourner au travail et à destiner une partie d'eau, s'il y a de l'eau, pour ces palmiers. Actuellement, tout l'eau va pour les oliviers. Je ne suis pas contre les oliviers, mais l'axe principal de l'île, l'axe principal de la vie ou l'île, c'est la charfia. La vie à Kerkina, elle tourne autour de la charfia, des poissons. Je ne sais pas. C'est débranché.
Thank you very much, Hafed. Since your microphone is still on, please don't turn off your microphone because I have another question for you. That comes from David Mackenzie. How are the palm tree or the palm materials used in this traditional fishing method? But you have to unmute yourself. You are in silent.
Maï.
Okay.
La charfia est une technique de pêche typique de l'île de Kerkina. Les palmes servent à piéger le poisson. C'est un axe, on fait un axe, il y a une chambre de capture, tout est une technique. Le palme, c'est pour drainer le poisson vers la chambre de capture. Tout est en palmier, tout est naturel. Actuellement, au lieu de ces palmiers, on dresse des filets avec du plastique. Mais il y a toujours des gens qui sont conscients ou jusqu'à maintenant, ils travaillent avec les palmes. C'est une harmonie, c'est une symphonie. La charfia, lorsque tu le vois avec le palmier, c'est vraiment l'idéal. Avec le plastique, c'est le désastre. C'est même, si tu vois l'image, elle est défigurée. Je ne sais pas si vous voyez le charfia qui est derrière moi. Juste derrière moi. C'est vraiment ce que nos ancêtres ont pu réaliser avec tout ce qui se trouve autour d'eux, avec les de bord élaborés. Et actuellement, pour faciliter les choses, c'est toujours des plastiques. Je ne sais pas si vous avez compris.
Thank you very much, Hafed. I would like now to ask a question to Aruna. Aruna, are there other examples in India where indigenous knowledge has been used for water management?
Would you repeat the question one more time? Hello.
Yes. Hello. I will repeat the question. People would like to know if there are other examples in India where indigenous knowledge has been used for water management.
Yeah. In Rajasthan, there is another water management, indigenous water management system. In Rajasthan. Hello.
Rajendra Singh.
By Rajendra Singh.
He got Magsaysay award also.
He got also the Magsaysay award in that, the water management for the Mr.
Okay.
Rajendra Singh from Rajasthan.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. He used the traditional knowledge for the water management system.
People earlier used to practice, he revived that.
And the people, they are earlier used to practice, no? So he revived actually in Rajasthan, the traditional water management system. And also he got the award for that also.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Aruna. I would like to make a question for Tomonori. Tomonori, is there a local competition or pressure for the water from your irrigation channels, for example, for human use or from the town or the city, or are they separate?
They are separate. The irrigation is only for agriculture, and people who get water from the irrigation have to pay some money for the maintenance for the irrigation. So it's they are separate, so there is no pressure. But when we have a less rain and when we have a less water in the river, we have to be very patient because we have to share the water, so we cannot get water anytime we want. So there's no pressure, but sometimes we have to be very patient depending on the weather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess that is also part of this spirit of sharing.
Exactly, exactly right. Yeah, we
Exactly.
share. We have to share. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. There is a question also for me. What slow food can do to better preserve the commons? Is there any form of label truly preserving the food products harvested from the commons? Well, I think this is the philosophy behind the slow food procedure. When we set up a community of producers around to keep the traditional knowledge and to preserve the biodiversity. And this is done among a common vision about how the development of that particular product, being a grain, being a way of preserved fish, how this is being kept in the future. So yeah, we have another question for Aruna. Aruna, may you say something about displacement of people for construction of dams?
Yeah.
Yes.
What is the whole question?
The question is, could you say something about displacement of people for construction of dams?
Yeah.
Huge displacement, no compensation.
There has been a lots of big displacement for the indigenous people, but there is still no any compensation. There are lots of displacement being done by the government. So still there is a big the Koilkaro project, which in Gumla district and Latihar district. There is two reasons. The one project is the Koilkaro project. Still people are suffering from them. There are lots of people suffered from them, and still there is no any compensation. Lots of people have been encroached, and lots of people in that Koilkaro project. The estimated displacement around at the 7,063 families from 112 villages, and as a high as 2 lakhs people. If we're talking about the peoples in 112 villages, from around 2 lakhs people have been affected with this Koilkaro project. And the area about 66 acre of cultivated land have been already they used for the big construction of big dams like a Koilkaro project. Around 66 hectare of acres of area, the cultivated area. And this is just one example. There are many more such as example for construction of the big dam, like a Narmada Dam. But there is still, people are still suffering. There is no any compensation in that regard.
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much, Aruna. Well, we have still some minutes, and I'm still thinking about what is slow food doing to preserve the commons. And I think actually Terra Madre is the movement to preserve the commons. We have all the thematic networks, being slow fish, slow seeds, that allowed people to raise their voices, this collective vision to work together for the future we want. So, and I think this 6 months is a beautiful window for reflecting about which kind of collective action can we do all together. Well, we have a question, another question for Marco. Marco, are those ladies still on the bridge?
Okay, no, they have left a few last year because the decision was final. Even if there are still some protests, because that hydropower plant is still in the special plan for the in the local planning, let's say. So maybe one day some other investor could come and would like try to start a new one. So they are still not there, but they are still checking if the situation is right.
And also for Marco, are these companies or the investors building the dams local, European, or internationally?
Oh, okay, so it really depends. There are both local and international. Most of the times they are European, West European. They could be Italians, Austrians, from Italy, from Austria and other countries, and often they are also local.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. So, well, it seems that we don't have more questions by now. I mean, thank you very much for all your time and engagement in this forum. The first part of this aquatic journey has finished, but we will continue later in the afternoon. So please visit our website, www.derramadresalonedelgusto.com, to participate in our events, and please follow us in Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Thank you all, and Viva Terra Madre! Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye. Thank you, Johan.
The future of our planet is decided at the table, in our daily food choices. What do we know about what we eat? How do we choose? Where do we buy it? You can make a difference and contribute to a future where everyone has access to food that is good. Eating must be a pleasure for everyone. We all have a right to food that is healthy, natural, fresh, and seasonal. Clean. Being aware helps us to choose food that is good for our health and the health of our planet. Fair. Knowing our food means making choices that are fair to us, to the producers, and to future generations. Slow Food has been working for over 30 years to defend biodiversity and fight the climate crisis by promoting good, clean, and fair food for all. Support Slow Food. Let's act together for the common good. Go to donate.slowfood.com/en and follow us at terramadresalonedelgusto.com.